now we need to get our theme set up. I'm going to be using a theme called Weaver Extreme. This is the newest version of the Weaver theme, something that I've been using for at least 3 or 4 years or so, I would say. And I'm a big fan of this theme because it offers a lot of different customization options, especially for it being a free theme. They do have a pro version of it. It is not my theme. It's developed by, I don't even know the guy. I think his name is Bruce. So I'm not connected with the theme in any way whatsoever. And you don't have to get the upgraded pro version. You can actually use the free version forever. That's all I use. I've never upgraded to the pro version. I find the free version features to be more than enough for what I'm looking to do. So now we're going to get this theme installed. We're going to be setting up a couple of extra plugins. The reason why I didn't mention these before in the previous step is because they go along with this theme. And then we're going to actually go through the theme settings, and this also involves actually getting our site design put together. So going back over to my website now, if I go to Appearance and Themes, I can add a new theme using the button up at the top. And then I simply search for the theme name over here. So over here, I'm just going to type in Weaver Extreme, hover over this, and click on the Install button. Once I'm done, I can activate it, and then my theme is ready to be used. Now, as soon as you have activated it and you get taken back to this theme page here, look at the notice that is up at the top. These plugins, at least 2 of these 4 plugins, are the additional plugins that you need to install. One of them is Weaver Show Post. So I'm going to open this into a new tab and click on Install Now. And go ahead and get that activated. And then I can do the same thing with the Weaver Extreme theme support. Once I have these 2 extra themes activated, or plugins activated, these help to add additional features to the Weaver theme. It's not something we'll be utilizing in this class, but as we put the website together, we will be utilizing those 2 plugins that we installed. The couple of additional plugins that they recommend, they're not necessarily bad. You can take a little bit of time to explore them. If you don't have much or any HTML or CSS knowledge, you can use something like WP Edit, and it expands your editor toolbar within WordPress to give you more options for web design that requires basically no technical knowledge to do. WP Retina is for images for Retina devices. Something that can be useful, but again is not necessarily required to be used. So I am going to leave those off of this particular site and just use those 2 that I have already mentioned, the show post and the theme support. So now I'm going to go to Appearance and Theme Options. This is the page where you manage essentially the entire theme from. There's maybe 1 or 2 minor exceptions to that statement. The first thing that you want to do, though, is to set a Weaver sub-theme. That is all of these different boxes that you see at the bottom of the screen. Each of these boxes represents an overall design that you can have for your website. So if you are looking to do something specific in terms of you want it to be certain colors, or you want it to have a certain look to it, whether you want sidebars or not, there might be something here that kind of stands out to you more than the others. In general, though, I often keep most of my Amazon affiliate sites as plain as I possibly can, so the focus really remains on the content itself, and people don't get distracted by the design instead. So I will generally end up using 2011 Lite as my subtheme. The plain subtheme or even the blank subtheme are other ones, maybe even magazine. A lot of these are fairly similar, but may simply have a couple of elements that are colored up instead of everything essentially being black and white. But for my site, I'll be using 2011 Lite here again. So once you set your sub-theme, you can then go on adjusting additional settings for the theme itself. You don't ever want to go through and change any settings before you have selected that sub-theme, because there are a lot of settings within Weaver that will get wiped out if you select a new sub-theme. So start here, use this as a base for your design, and then work from that. But don't ever come back and actually change the sub-theme unless you're willing to have all that wiped out. So once you have your sub-theme selected, you can then proceed on with setting the initial Weaver settings. In this main option tab, this is kind of the main area that you will find yourself using within Weaver Extreme. And this really works pretty similar to a lot of the previous versions of Weaver. However, they've kind of made it a little bit easier to find what you're looking for in Weaver Extreme. So I do like a lot of the changes that they have made, despite the fact that they may have removed a couple of particular features and put it over on the Pro version that you have to actually upgrade to get. However, Weaver Extreme still accomplishes all of the special design and customization tasks that I am generally looking to have my Amazon sites do. So I am still a huge fan of this new updated theme. So with that said, in terms of the general site design, I'll come back to that in just a few minutes. The first thing I want to talk about, though, is the basic settings that I would really recommend for all of you to adjust on this particular theme, no matter what your end site will end up looking like. These settings simply just go along better with the style that I will use for constructing this site. So with that said, the first setting that I would recommend to adjust is under main options, then you go to sidebars and layout. And we're looking for a setting to remove these sidebars. I think I passed over it already. Yeah, it's these initial drop-down boxes. Now, notice the words that are to the left of these different drop-down boxes. This one says blog post and page default, archive like default, page, blog, and post single page. Now this can be a little bit confusing initially, but basically what's going on with these 5 drop-down boxes is you're determining the default layout of different types of content on your website. For this site, I'm going to be setting everything to no sidebars. So I'm just going to be changing this top drop-down box and setting it to no sidebars. The second one is also no sidebars, and the rest say use default. So that's going to reference what I'm using up top here. If I wanted to do something like maybe all of my posts would contain a sidebar, I could leave them enabled here, change my pages to no sidebars. And so you can kind of adjust the different types of content, whether or not it's going to show the little sidebar widgets or not to go along with it. Again, though, for my site, I'm not going to use any sidebars by default. This is something, though, that I could enable on a per page basis as I proceed through construction. Next up, I'm going to go over to the header tab, and I want to go to the header image section right here. This is going to drop me down the page just a little bit. And right up here in the top, I want to hide the header image on all devices. Now, what this is going to do, let me flip over here to my site real quick before I end up saving this. This is going to remove this primary image from the top of my site. However, there may be some people, I know at least one person has reached out and emailed me and said, hey, I'm planning on using something like Fiverr to get a graphic made for the top of my site as like a logo, and I'd rather use that instead of words perhaps, or maybe a logo along with some words. That is something that it is okay to do. If you can just use a graphical picture though, and still have these actual words at the top of your site, that's really the best way to go. However, you don't have to have a logo. You can simply just do what I'm going to be doing to this site here and hide the header image on all devices. Now, if you did want to use a logo, you obviously would not want to be changing this setting. If you want to upload a new picture for the header, you have to go to Appearance and Header. And this actually allows you to add a new image in, so it will then be shown up at the top of your site. Now let's say, for example, you have an image that has a logo on the left-hand side, but maybe the rest of it's blank, and you want this text to be showing over to the right-hand side of the logo. I'd still recommend creating your logo to be the default size, which is 940 pixels wide by 188 pixels tall. Then you just have your logo over on the left-hand side or on the right-hand side of it, perhaps, whichever works with what you're trying to go for. And you can simply move your title and your tagline over top of your image. You have right here, move title tagline over image, and then you can adjust the X and the Y values right here for the position to actually change where that information is showing up. If for some reason though, you were using a logo and everything was built in to where you didn't want to have this extra text showing up at all, you can also hide on all devices your title and your tagline using these options here. The next thing that I want to do is go to the Menus tab. And I'm going to go to the info bar section. It's going to bring me close to the bottom of the page. And in this section, I want to hide my info bar on all devices. The info bar is an extra piece of content that's really going to be showing up like right here. This word home right here is part of the info bar. It can also include things like a search bar, login links, things of that nature. You can see right here, page navigation. But I really don't end up using this kind of stuff on my site. I like to manually link up the different sections. For example, instead of using a breadcrumb to link up the different parts of my site. So I simply hide this info bar using this drop-down box here. The next thing I want to do is go over to post specifics. Now here I want to go to post navigation to start with. Under post navigation, I want to change the single page navigation style to none. This is simply going to remove links on my post that point back and forth to the more recent or older posts that are within that same category. It's just an extra link that's on the page that I find to be unnecessary. The next thing I want to do is on this same page here, and this is involving the post meta info area section. I'm going to be checking all 9 of these boxes right here. The main thing this is really accomplishing is hiding that info bar area. But this is going to be happening on the posts on my site. Whereas the previous setting that I changed, the one that was actually talking about the info bar, that had to do with my pages. So with all 9 of those checked, I am ready to proceed, and I'm going to go over to the footer now. In this footer section, I'm looking for this very last area called Site Copyright. And I want to check this little box here. This is simply going to remove this little powered by statement from the bottom of my pages. So now that I have all my settings changed, I'm going to save my changes. And then I could go and take a look at my live site to see how it reflected. However, notice here, when I go back to my main website and I just click on refresh, how I'm still not seeing my updated changes. Sometimes WordPress or even your browser can still cache an older version of something into your page. So what I'd recommend doing if you make a change like that you know is going to be showing something different, but you still don't see any changes on your live site, either edit the page that you're seeing, just make a minor adjustment to the page, or just simply visit a different page on your website. You can see here if I visit this other page on my site that the powered by statement at the bottom is now gone. Other things like the info bar up at the top of my page are also now missing. But again, my home page is currently going to still look the same until I make some changes to what's actually trying to get cached on that home page. But this is something that will be coming up here in just a little while in this class. So the next thing I need to do, involving my theme here that I have installed, is to add in code that I got from Google Analytics. Remember I told you to paste this code into a notepad file for the time being, and then we would come back to it. Well, I want to go ahead and select all of this analytics code now, and I'm going to copy it, and then I'm going to be entering this into my theme. So I want to go to advanced options this time, and finally to HTML insertion. You can really kind of put this code anywhere you want to, in any one of these boxes, it'll end up working fine. Personally, though, I often put it in the post footer simply because when somebody visits my site, if they start to let it load, it immediately click away. If I have this all the way at the footer, this may never actually get loaded, and so it won't count as a page view. Well, you might wonder why I would want to actually exclude some of the page views from my stats. Well, the reason why is because I can't help but think that Google would really never have all of these different services set up, things like analytics and webmaster tools, and not somehow use at least some kind of information from that to help with their Google rankings. So I strongly believe that there are at least a couple of aspects, things like their benchmarking, in particular bounce rates that occur on your site. A bounce rate is when somebody lands on your site and leaves it without viewing any additional pages of your site. So this can actually help to wipe out some of those page views that end up counting as a bounce instead. And so by not counting that, with it being down in the footer, that requires people to let the whole page load up before they really get tracked. So now I'm going to save my settings once again. And this adds Google Analytics onto my site now. So all I have to do to really verify that analytics is running is just simply visit my website. When I visit a page that has that analytics code on it, Google Analytics will start tracking it. And then you can come back at a later point in time and essentially analyze how your site's doing, where your traffic is coming from, how they are making their way through your site. And this information could be really, really valuable towards knowing how to make changes to your site in the future. So I like to go ahead and get all this set up from the get-go. So once my site is complete, I might already have some data available for me that I can kind of work with. So now the main thing that you have left with the theme at this point involves your overall site design. If you look at your site and there's a particular aspect of it that you're not incredibly thrilled with, maybe you want to change the color of something, the size of something, all that stuff can be done through the Weaver administration. This same area we've been in, the theme options, and then the main options tab, where you have all these different sub-tabs. Each of these different sections applies to a different area of your actual website. So if you wanted to change maybe the menu bar that's on your site, you look at your menu bar and you say, okay, it's black. I'd like to at least add a little bit of color to my website maybe, so I'd like for it to be blue. Well, in addition to the color of something, if you're looking at this and saying, okay, I want to change this black to blue, you also have to consider other colors that might be connected to it. For example, when I hover over a menu link, it actually changes the color to a different color. So you would want to look at your site and ask yourself whether you would also need to be changing these other colors, like the hover background color, or the color of the text links that are actually showing up. You can see all this stuff kind of is different to a certain extent. So if I were to change my black to a really light blue background color, then the text and stuff might not be easily visible anymore. So I would also have to change that to correspond with it. So that kind of thing is found again on the main options. It's fairly self-explanatory to find the section of your site that you're looking for. Whereas I'm trying to change my menu background color, I just go to the menu page, and then I just simply look here, and any of these color boxes that you see throughout these settings are going to be altering the color of a different design element of your page. So menu bar background right here can be used, and I just simply select a new color, and that would change my background color for me. So if I stuck with a similar dark color, I might not have to change my text colors, for example. But if I needed to change the main text color, for example, right here, it's currently white. If I was going with a light background, I would want to flop this and make my text color dark so they contrast against each other and can be seen easily. Other things like the hover background, maybe I don't want to keep that at the default value. So I'm still going with something kind of light, but it's a little more geared towards my color selection for my background here. So with a couple of simple changes like that, I'm not going to be able to see these changes. I'm just going to make a minor edit to this sample page here. And you can see how this will end up allowing me to see the theme changes that I have made, because I'm no longer viewing a cached version of that page that I had previously seen. So now my background of my menu is a dark blue, and when I hover over an item, it is now a light blue color instead. So the same type of thing is used to change really the coloring of pretty much anything throughout the site. The menu bar, for the most part, you're not going to use the secondary menu bar. You're probably just going to be using the primary menu bar. So these colors up at the top here. You have tons of other design aspects to it. Things like shadows, rounded corners, little extras that you can kind of add into your site design like that if you want. But again, this isn't something that you have to do. But I know a lot of you do like to try to customize the look of any given site that you're building. Other things like the site title and the tagline. How this is just basic text sitting in this little blank area at the top of my page. I could try to change this. Maybe I wanted to center this information at the top of my page. I could do with my title right here, I can change the X and the Y positions. You can see what the default values are right here, 7% for X and 0.25% for Y. Think of this like a grid where this little top area, basically this point right up here in the top left-hand corner would be 0, 0. And then so as you go down, this would be your Y, and as you go over to the right, this would be your X. So if I wanted to move this farther over to my right to perhaps try to center it, I can put in a value like maybe 25%. I might need to go more like 35 or 40% even to actually get that to center correctly. Same thing with my tagline. I could bump that over just a little bit as well to try to get it centered. Now, the only issue with trying to play around with a design like this is, number one, the caching, to where you may have to continue making minor updates to a page to get it to show you the changes correctly. But then, as you can see here, this adjusting of my words to the right a little bit, it's not an exact science. I kind of have to gauge things by sight and make minor changes to it as I go. So my title looks okay here. My description, my tagline, still needs to be moved over to the right more though. So I might go something more like 30% there. I might even bump my Y value down just a little bit to get the top title a little closer to my tagline. So that looks pretty close, where I have not really done a lot here, but I've just kind of tidied things up a little bit. So any different aspects of your site like this that you do want to kind of change around, you can do that. It's really not too difficult to actually do. You also have other effects like rounded corners, shadows, fading the outside background, a lot of this stuff on this wrapping areas tab here. A lot of this has to do with the overall design of the site. You can see I faded my background. I rounded the corners of my entire site enclosure here, and I've even added a little bit of a shadow to the edge of it. So simple changes within Weaver Extreme can be made to where you're not getting fancy with your design. You're not, hiring a professional web designer or having graphics made, things of that nature. Just some minor simple changes like this can really help to make your site look a lot better, but still allow your content to be the star of your site. To the point where if somebody lands on this page, you want the first thing that their eye sees and really goes for is the content of your page, because that's what is important for this type of website. With that said, feel free to play around with individual aspects if there's certain things that you want to change, but hopefully this at least gives you a general idea of how you can use this theme to change the design of your site, to adjust the different colors especially that are there. You can even do things like changing font sizes for the different areas of your website in these settings too. So once you are happy with the way your website looks as a whole, in terms of the overall layout of everything, the menus, in terms of their placement, their coloring, the titles and stuff up at the top of your page, everything but what is actually going on in the center of your page as far as your content. When you're happy with that, you can proceed on and begin setting up your website structure.